Well, that was much quicker than we were hoping for, but what's up, everybody? It is college Gamebreakers. Conference tournament weekend is hot and off to a start tonight. We got another one kicking off on Saturday. Technically, there's two, but we're going to cover the American East here on College Gamebreakers. Brought to you by thebreakdownsports.com. You're probably following us on Twitter at BRKDWN_sports. We're also live on Facebook and YouTube right now, so check us out. Follow us there on any of those outlets. Hit us up with any of your American East thoughts, who you like, any analysis you want. We want to hear it from you. But for once again, we got Jordan back. How you doing tonight on this Thursday?
I'm good, man. Excited to talk. I think this is the conference with the most animals represented. So I'm looking forward to talk. We got retrievers, we got Danes, Seawolves, Riverhawks, and UNH's Wildcats? No. Yeah, something along those lines. So we got a lot of animals. I'm excited.
Wow.
Big animal guy.
I was about to say that's what they come here for. Most amount of mascots that are animals. But with this American East Conference, man, do they even deserve a bid? It's a hot start, but at this point, it's real rough case for one of these teams not being a play-in 16 seed. You kind of have them and the Patriot where if they get anything but that, it's kind of a disservice to it.
I don't think you're wrong there. I said this to you earlier today. I said, do I really need to pick a coach of the year? Because no one deserves it. There was no team in this conference that really separated themselves. Whereas in the past, like Vermont has been a top 100 team in the past. Easily. They've been close to a legitimate tournament team. I think they advanced. They've never made it past, I don't think, the round of 32 in recent memory. But I know they've won their play-in games. They've won the first round a few times. And this year, between COVID and cancellations and everything, there really just wasn't much separation. And when you are one of the less talented conferences overall, and you can't separate yourself, it certainly makes it a hard push to say that you truly deserve a spot in the big dance.
So, you know what's the best way? The mascot to hide it? Bracket inception. Put pods, put 3 brackets inside of one bracket. Have a team drop out so you have 9 teams. So it's just a messed up bracket. But we talked about the Horizon bracket practice. You got reseeding in this one. Here you got pods. You got UMBC and Vermont getting a pass to the Final Four here. Like Vermont needs any more help. I'm going to get into that Vermont slander, even though they are one of the better teams in this conference, probably the top dog. But regular season winner was UMBC and Vermont. They split it, had the same record there. Like we said, not a shot for any at-large bids here. Nope. And, man, like when you're going through this, and if you just never watched a single game of this conference and just looked at KenPom, you'd be like, holy shit. You got a lot of good defenses in this conference. And it's just like you haven't really watched this conference because the defenses are that good because the offenses are that bad.
Yeah.
Because you have Vermont is the only team. I think they're 111 in KenPom on offense, but every other team in the American East is outside of the top 220 in offense. So that's just kind of where you get some stat padding there. Good there.
Yeah. In that sense, it's literally the opposite of the Horizon. The Horizon offenses, and most notably, we talked about like their 3-point shooting seemed unreal, but it's because the defenses in the Horizon were just so bad.
Yeah, you got a nice little flip-flop, a little contrariety there between the two. But when you go up and look at the conference rankings, there's just nothing you really want to talk about because they don't rank pretty high in anything. Just a bunch of teams that thankfully they made it through. One did drop out like Maine did, so that makes it very different. Just pull up the AE Hoops tweet if you want to look at the bracket when we get into it because we're not going to attempt to explain this out. You got 2 pods. New Hampshire gets to host one. Hartford gets to host one, but New Hampshire gets a bye. Hartford doesn't get a bye. Yeah, it is what it is. And once again, no odds. Man, it's not pick and troll. We're not troll-tolling anyone, but the Horizon never had odds listed. Maybe we'll get them after the first round, hopefully. But once again, American East, no odds posted. Starts Saturday. Big South also starts Saturday. No odds posted. What's up with this? I am very upset.
Hopefully, once we get closer towards mid majors, we at least start to get some odds. The mid majors and the power conferences. You would think. I mean, you would think all of them. How hard is it for them to, project out the likelihood that Binghamton makes it all the way, or NJIT? Like, just throw the largest number you can imagine out there, collect a couple $100, and it's winning. Like, there's no way that some of these teams, and you make a UMBC or Vermont plus 150, one plus 150, the other like plus 175, call it a day.
Yeah, the max that you're going to put on it, the cap that they put on it, I mean, their exposure wouldn't really be that high. Get people in there, get people enticing, because it's just going to bring them back later. But
put a $500 limit on it. Like,
yeah,
you're gonna come out on top. There's no way that you would lose all your action on any type of futures, especially conferences that are this predictable, I would say.
So the biggest one's going to be is the Missouri Valley. They start Sunday. It is the opening rounds. They have the ones that get the bye. So that's the big one to monitor if there's going to be odds out for there or not. So essentially here, if we had to do our own odds, we're both math guys, both like the maths. Vermont easily would be the favorite, even though they're the 2 seed. You would put them probably minus 140-ish. I would say maybe you could put them down to minus 125 because it's home court advantage. It's not neutral site like the Horizon was. You would put UMBC less than plus 150, maybe plus 200 max, and anyone else just give them whatever fucking random number
make up
you
a
want.
number. Yeah.
And then, that's where it works. So that's where not that hard. Any number, if there's a predictable market or something that would have happened, team that you would have backed on the odds, long shot, favorite, anything that you would have liked to eyed up here?
I mean, Vermont would be similar to where we talked about in the Horizon League with Wright State. Like, Vermont should come out on top here. I don't know what your bracket looks like. I would assume you have Vermont going all the way to the finals, and where they're going to be favorites in the 2 games that they might have to play. I don't see. Yeah, I mean, the first game they're probably going to be minus 300 favorites. They're probably going to be 8, 9, 10 point favorites. So that's about minus 250, minus 300. And then you're going to get them a little bit closer in a final game, depending who their opponent is. If you could get them at minus 125, you would bet that. Come out on top. Bet you bet the dog in the first game, and then you take the points against them in the second game, and you still can come out on top. I think that would be like if they were to post them, I would do that. If I had to try and take a long shot here, and I think we're kind of going to jump right into this, is my long shot would be UMass Lowell, the number 6 seed coming into this tournament. I think they have the best player in the conference. I don't care that he did not win player of the conference tonight, but I feel that they have the best player in the conference in Obadiah Noel, and that's why I'd ride UMass Lowell just from that. I mean, this is a conference that scoring is certainly a premium, and when you actually have a player who is a 20-point a game scorer, and you can ride the hot hand, I would absolutely do that with the 6 seed of UMass Lowell.
Yeah, so this is where it kind of would be crazy calling UMBC a long shot, but that's where I loaded up Haselmetrics.
Mm-hmm.
They said it'd probably be like a 4 to 5 point spread in the finals, especially if UMBC has home. So that's kind of where if you had UMBC at plus 125, it wouldn't be worth it to back them there. But if you could get them up to like plus 200, you're just hoping they win their one game and they get Vermont, and you barely get any closing line value. So that's where if I really had to give a long shot, I would have to say I would go to Stony Brook as my number 1 team here. So we're going to get a nice little back and forth here when we break down this first round matchup. But I think we both hit it on the nail on the head where you want to be in the New Hampshire pod if you're targeting a future.
Yeah.
I think the books would have targeted targeted that and worked that into the number a little bit. But UNH is definitely the most fraudulent team that I think is in this brackets. One team with not decent odds, or one team that I would just cross out, would be NJIT. Regardless of any of the other 8 teams in this conference, I think they have a shot to get the Final Four, except for NJIT. This team, I mean, I don't want to rail off or go terrible on it, but their 2-point defense is, I mean, it's not even respectable there. That's my biggest thing. They're lasting momentum heading into this tournament. This just works all out perfectly for them to upset the Danes of Albany, just because Albany did lose to St. Joe's. So you got to work that into account without Daly at that point. But NJIT, that's the only team I would cross off instantly. And with no odds, can't really say confident or would back this one. But I think it's anyone in the New Hampshire pod that's UMass Lowell or Stony Brook.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we kind of alluded to it. We're going to give a deep dive on 2 teams right now that we think we can win it. And that's going to be, we're going to lead it off with who we think the favorites are. Betting favorites here, Vermont. My biggest question is, are they frauds? Because I think the fraud meter is in yellow. If you do the 3-color scale, it's very close to the green here, saying they are frauds. One, they only played UMBC. They did not play UNH or Hartford. So that meant they beat up, and they did play Maine. Maine dropped out, but they did get their 2 easy games there. So that's where easiest to stat pad against when we talked and alluded to the most terrible offenses. 1-1 against Quad 2 and Quad 3. Then they went 8-2 against Quad 4. So, I mean, they lost to UMass Lowell in the first conference game, and then they lost to NJIT, which I take with a great consideration. And then losing to Albany and UMBC ain't that bad. It's just they got the player of the year in Ryan Davis. They have the best scoring offense. They have the best overall team. They just have not played anybody. They're consistent because they like their 2s, and they're going to shoot 78% from the free throw line. And especially in a very poor conference, when you're the most well-rounded team, you have the top defense, and you have the 2s and the free throws. I hate backing chalk in this scenario, but there's not many better options. We'll get into UMBC, but what are your thoughts on Vermont?
I mean, best team in the conference, but as I mentioned, this isn't like the best Vermont team we've seen. While we were talking a little bit earlier, I clicked in to see where they've fallen in rankings over the last 5-10 seasons. John Becker, that's their head coach. He's been there for close to 10 years. Obviously, growing up in New England, I always saw Vermont and kind of I wasn't paying attention to the American East, but I knew it existed, and I knew that by and large, Vermont seemed to win their conference every year. The highest they ranked in 2017, they were 65th. 19, they were 75, and last year they were 89th in the Bart Torvik ranking. So they are the best team in this conference. As you mentioned, they do have the player of the year from their conference in Ryan Davis. Senior, this is last year with the team, wants to go out on top. I think it's hard to make a case for them to lose and not advance to the tournament. The trouble with whether they're frauds or not is just that, I mean, the American East overall really handcuffed them by deciding to only play conference games. If we got to see them play,
well, UMBC and a few other guys got conference.
Oh, really?
Vermont just elected out of non-con completely.
I don't think
UMBC
I didn't realize
played
that.
G-Town.
Oh, you're right. They played
tough.
19. Yep. Stony Brook played some games. Okay, so
it was just Vermont.
They really
stat padded. So that's why they had that rough start where they were 2-3 sitting January 2nd. And everyone's like, what the hell's going on? Then they rattled off 8 straight wins. Mm-hmm. Ended up dropping the last game of the season to UMBC to share the title. But that's why I think they did stat padding to its finest. If you look at their 3-point percentage defense, they rank in the top 25 because they played nobody that could shoot threes or hit threes.
They played Stony Brook, which is one of the worst teams in the country.
Two teams hit double-digit threes against them. 2.
I'm looking at that now. Yeah, they held Binghamton to 2 of 28 from 3, and they held Maine before Maine threw in the towel to 1 of 15 from 3.
That's why I just have to say they're frauds because they didn't beat anybody
Yeah.
other than UMBC, and they lost the second one. Yes, the back-to-backs is the toughest thing, so that's where you take that with a grain of salt. I'm hyped to see the last one because in the first game of the back-to-backs against UMBC, they averaged 1.3 points per possession, and then the second one they averaged 0.83. So that huge 0.5 point swing, you usually don't see it. But with Vermont, they just couldn't hit anything that game. And to get into UMBC, who is the second team that we think can win it, and we are not here, there will be no Darnell Rogers slander, disrespect, any ill will talking of him on this stream because he's one of the most electric players, 5'2", just a straight up baller. Sole reason why, if UMBC was listed at like plus 200, I was going to lock in the future on them just because he was low key one of my favorite players to watch because starter, throw it on him, just like, yeah, 5'2" guy, just getting 10 points. Nothing better in college basketball.
I'm looking at photos of him and I can't even fucking control myself. I mean, just seeing him on the court against other American East players who are probably 5'10" to 6'6" is laughably funny. But he transferred, right?
Not too sure I can say I know the entire story, but he covers someone when they play Vermont. That's the smallest guy Vermont rolls out is 6'2", so he's legitimately covering someone that's a full foot taller than him. So that's where his defense just has bad numbers, just because like you can't expect that. But his offense, his creativity, he's a great assist player, not the best shooter, but this UMBC team, they got Horvath and Edo Rock. Those guys get going, they can beat Vermont. We saw that in the last game. They ended the season on a nice hot streak, winning 4 of their last 5, only dropping it to Vermont. Don't want to say they're the hot team. They do have home court advantage, but it's Maryland, so very limited if any fans are in there.
Yeah.
This team just doesn't do anything for me. They have experience, but Vermont matches them exactly with the same.
All these teams have experience. It's one of the bottom conferences. All their players are staying for 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, they did have a non-con, so like their non-con schedule does look a little better because they're 5-1 against the quad 3, so they did get some nice wins, but those are all the way back in early November, December. You almost throw them out at this point. They got UNH both times, but as we both said, you wanted to be in UNH's pod because that's the easiest way out of it. They split them with Hartford, they split them with Vermont, so they did play all the top teams here, unlike Vermont that only played the UMBC. So that's where, UMBC is more battle tested. They have the home court. I mean, we've seen them pull off the biggest upset ever in college basketball history. Let's hope that they can pull off a small one there to make it more interesting because, I mean, the American East gave Vermont the biggest cakewalk here. Yeah. Them getting the 2 seed was the biggest thing as we're about to get into maybe our upsets to watch, maybe our bracket talk. But yes, the way that this plays out when you fill out your bracket at home with your bracket practice here, any way you pull it, there's like one scenario where Vermont pulls out the hard like matchup in the Final Four. All the rest, UMBC gets that tough matchup.
Yep.
So yes, we both hit on our long shots. You like UMass Lowell.
Mm-hmm.
I like Stony Brook. So that's where our upsets to watch are. Obviously, we're going to get into why we break down that, but let's roast New Hampshire for a little bit. I'll turn it off to you first, being the New England guy. Why do you think UMass Lowell is going to take out Stony Brook at home, or take out UNH at home?
Yeah, so I have, in my first game, I do have UMass Lowell advancing over Stony Brook, strictly off the scoring that Noel can provide. Otherwise, those two teams are extremely closely matched. I don't think I'm trying to real quickly look. There's nothing really that Stony Brook does well that is a weakness of UMass Lowell, aside from that they are a decent free throw shooting team. So let's say in my scenario, UMass Lowell advances to go on against UNH. UNH, I mean, I watched 2 of their games this year, and it was like watching high school basketball. The bleachers, because they play in a gym with bleachers, were rolled up into the wall, except for one section where they had like 5 people. I assume it was like, production staff or something. Production staff, maybe some team managers, something like that, were seated. Wow, that was rough. That was really bad. But one thing that UMass Lowell does, the scoring, what they're going to be able to do against that New Hampshire defense, which doesn't really exist, especially at the guard position. UNH, all their players are just about nation's average, if not below nation's average. And I think that Noel, if they were to go against Noel or if they were to go against Ryan Davis, I just think it's really hard for them to kind of fight that firepower.
Yeah, that's where when you see, because they have the cakewalk schedule, they played basically no non-con
No
because
one.
they played all quad fours. Their offensive rebounding, they don't allow it very frequently, which is strange to see being an undersized team.
Yeah.
But all the teams in here, they played a max of 4 games in February. They've played 1 game UNH since 2-6. All
Oh,
3
really? I
games,
didn't realize that.
all 3 games they played in February have been against UMass Lowell. So those two have the most familiarity with each other with the most recent games. I mean, I think you've just fade UNH first half no matter what in that game if UMass Lowell or Stony Brook come up.
Yeah.
And this is where I don't know how. I mean, they did get pretty, I guess you could say, lucky, but they lost. I just go through their schedule. I don't want to walk through each game. I don't know how they ended up with the 3 seed when you just look at it. They went 9-6 in conference. They went 9-6 in conference and got it. They lost to Binghamton and they lost to Maine. Like the rest of the losses, they're respectable. Those 2 losses are pretty terrible to have on there. Their offense just goes non-existent in some games. So that's where if they match up with any team that plays some sort of defense, and that's why I am high on Stony Brook, because they have one of the more respectable defenses, even though none of them you can say you're confident or happy about. It's just
but at least they played a lot of non-con games. So at least while they're sitting in the middle of the rankings in terms of defense in the nation, there is some strength to that. They didn't play like elite teams. They're playing like Hofstra and Bryant, maybe a few other schools. I can't remember off the top of my head. I know I definitely
Peters, Fairfield, and St. John's were the other ones.
Yeah. So I mean, it's not like they're playing other than St. John's. They're not playing any top 100 schools. I doubt that they do not. They didn't win outside of quadrant 3. But at least there's some meat behind them. They played 21 games. They've got more experience. They've got more time under them. So I would say if they beat UMass Lowell in the initial game in the New Hampshire pod, I think I think whoever's going against UNH is going to beat UNH, whether it's the Riverhawks or the Seawolves.
Yeah, and I don't know if Stony Brook ever went on a pause because they had a gap from the 28th to the 16th, but that could just be the American East scheduling.
Uh-huh.
But that's where I think they're the only team that never went on the pause within the conference. So we both agree. Breaking down that first game, I mean, it's going to be a pick 'em, the +2 max at where it's projected. You can look at KenPom. You can look at all of them. I believe, where was it? Stony Brook lost both games in this series, correct?
Yes.
So that's just where, once again, I'm just going to take the team that's more, I guess more proven on no, Stony Brook won both games against UMass
Yeah,
Lowell
sorry.
in here.
I thought I was looking at the other. Yes, you're correct.
Yeah, so that's where the defense just was able to do something to a different level because they held them to 64 and 58 points. It's just the inefficiencies of their offense. Stony Brook did nothing world beating on offense. I mean, when you hold each of those games below 0.9 points per possession, that's where you're going to look out the wins and get the wins there because Stony Brook is not the hot team headed in here. They were 6-4 at one point. They ended the season at 9-13. Rough stretch to it. That offense is pretty putrid. So that's just where Stony Brook just show up. Let's get some good defense going. And they just defended too well. And that's what UMass Lowell, they depend on the two because they're not a 3-point world beaters here.
That's pretty true. One thing I will say when Stony Brook and UMass Lowell played each other, Noel scored 28 in one game and 30 in the next. So if UMass Lowell is going to make it out of this playing game, and honestly, if they're going to win any games at all, someone besides Noel has to score. You need to have someone who can score over 10 points, and not just, him combining for half of your team points is not going to be a recipe for success, whether that means you use him to draw fouls on other players by dishing to an open man or getting hacked down in the paint. You need to find ways to generate points outside of your number one scorer.
Completely agree with that. So let's see what happens in that one. With the next first round game, we're both on Albany. We don't want to break down the NJIT anymore because we'll get into a nice Albany preview with their pod game with who we think advances from Binghamton and Hartford. I think that's the next good point because we both tried to make cases from Binghamton. Their past 3 of their last 4 games, they posted their highest points per possession and their best defensive performances on that end of the court. So that's just where can't really call them a hot team because they only played 2 games.
And they only
February.
won 4 games all year.
But 3 of the 4 wins did come after January 25th, though. So I think that's what's a little bit more important because it's not a cakewalk. Binghamton did put up 1.21 points per possession in one of their games against Hartford. They did not win. They lost by 3. Hartford put up 1.3 points per possession. So that was just a great offensive game to go there. I can't really say Hartford's off a pause, but their last 2 games are 2-13 and 2-14. So by the time this one kicks off, it would be about 2 full weeks there. So that's just where, I don't know. Binghamton, they just haven't proven it. Yes, they're the hotter team of lately. They have the momentum on their side. Maybe a first half angle could be the look on Binghamton just because they played more recently. But at the end of the day, Hartford won both of theirs. Yes, you can always say beating a team 3 times is tough, but not in this type of season. I think with the long gap that's been between the 2 games, I think Hartford pulls this one out. But depending on the spread, I think Binghamton could pull out a cover.
So I have Hartford advancing as well over Binghamton. For me, it came down to Hartford's defense against Binghamton's offense. Binghamton, while they do actually shoot fairly well, and they're I think they might be the best 3-point team in the conference. Hartford is really good at defending the perimeter, but even more than that is how they generate turnovers, forcing a lot of steals, trapping guards, and I think that's what's going to ultimately prove trouble for Binghamton. I think this is going to be a very low-scoring game. Let me see if I can. What is going to be the projection? Bart Torvik has it at a projected total of 130 points. So, yeah, this is going to be a low-scoring one. It's going to be slow. I like Hartford to pull this one out just because their defense is going to be able to stop Binghamton. But like you said, if you're looking for ways to back Binghamton, that first half play against Hartford is certainly the way to go if they're coming off of 2 full weeks of no games.
Yep, and then let's jump back into the New Hampshire pod. We both have the underdog taking on there. Stony Brook, don't feel terribly comfortable with this one, but their terrible stretch at the end of the season has came against the top 5 teams, except for New Hampshire. They haven't caught them recently, so I think they do eke that one out. and with them advancing, they would pull UMBC in the next round. You have UMass Lowell. Any last thoughts you want to put on that one before we talk about Hartford versus Albany, which might be one of the better games in the conference tourney?
Yeah, so I have UMass Lowell beating UNH, and one of the things that I liked about it is that, what was it? UNH fouls a lot. They are the highest foul rate team in the conference, and UMass Lowell is actually one of the best teams at getting to the line, forcing those fouls. I think that puts UNH in trouble in terms of foul trouble. We're going to have a lot of UMass Lowell attempts from the free throw line, and while they're not necessarily elite from there, they're shooting. Oh, they're bad. They're shooting 67%. So they're not good from the free throw line, but if they're fouling the incorrect guys, which in this case is Obadiah Noel, he's shooting 76% from the stripe on 120 shots. Dude, this dude's usage is unreal. He has the ball on 30.5% of their possessions, and he shot this year. Let's see if he had 114 2-point attempts and 72 3-point attempts. So he had just about 200 shots from the field, and he had 122 free throws. So he's getting fouled on almost 50%. No, he's getting fouled. That's insane. He's getting fouled on about 40% of his of his shots from the field. That's crazy. That's ridiculously high.
That helps the defenses look better when their free throw rate just gets skewed when the other two are good.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so probably the sneaky good matchup here. We both have Hartford taking on Albany.
Yes.
And the Hartford pod, who goes out with both of us thinking UMass Lowell and Stony Brook, they draw UMBC. So who gets to draw Vermont? So we don't think the easy route pans out here because every other scenario, if UNH wins, UNH draws Vermont. And that's just the easiest. That's just the cakewalk because if UNH can luck their way out, if they do pull that one out, Vermont's going to probably win that game by 15 to 20 points. So we both think Vermont gets the harder draw here. You think Albany comes through.
I do.
I think Hartford comes through here. Once again, maybe potentially another first half angle here in Albany because all the momentum in this matchup just screams Albany here. They did split their two games in February, which does give me some cause for concern. But their 2-point offense is what gives me the most confidence here that they can pull out this win because not a lot of green in it. But Hartford, one thing they don't do is other than Staffy, they have 0.0 size. Yeah, Hunter Marks is decent in there, but he's not that productive or that good of a replacement player above the mean, especially when all of your games essentially come against the American East Conference. So that's just where I just think Albany can dominate the inside. Hartford, for some reason, just pulls this one out. No bit confident in this pick here because Hartford just backing the better defense. Did that with Stony Brook. Got to keep the mantra going. Going to back the better defense here because the 290th ranked offense, because Albany, crazy to think, ranks higher in offense than they do, but their defense is a little bit more of a liability. Not much more, but I'm just going to take the slightly better defensive team.
So the reason Albany's offense, and like you said, we're splitting hairs on this one. The reason their offense is better is just that Hartford has a tendency to turn over the ball. They turn over the ball on almost 20% of their possessions. And that's about 200th in the nation. So that's 200th in the nation against primarily American East foes. They did, like we said, they played St. John's, Fairfield, St. Peter's, and Bryant. Oh no, that's Stony Brook. Hartford definitely played Bryant. They're playing schools in and around the same area.
Hartford played UConn, Nova, Fairfield twice, and the daunted CCSU. These two teams never played each other this season, so you can't
CCSU.
So you can't really take any like prior games into each other because somehow no teams played each other other than UMass Lowell and UNH more than twice. So very weird how this came out. That's why there's so many limited games. These two teams never played each other.
Yeah. So Hartford turns over the ball a lot. I think that's where Albany has an edge in this one. This is certainly, I think this is going to be the best matchup of the tournament until we get down to the finals. I just think that the way these two teams are matched up, where neither of them are going to score a lot, this is going to be another defensive game, another low scoring game, not nearly as low as the Hartford Binghamton game, but we're talking like a 146, 142 type total game. And I'm taking Albany, which has slightly more momentum going into this game. They've won 3 of their last 5. And Hartford, as we mentioned, coming off a little bit of a break. They won 2 of their last 5, but that's over the last month. So I'm riding with Albany here. And Albany is advancing into my Final Four.
Yeah, it kind of seems to be that the mantra with Hartford is if they can hold you below
70,
100, 70 or 100 or 1 points per possession.
Yeah,
they're going to eke out the win.
Yep.
So that's just where I got to hope their defense just semi shows up here, because when we get into the Final Four, I don't know how Jordan's bracket breaks out, but I'm not going to spend much time breaking down these because Hartford and Vermont, I just think they both mollywop their competition. So in my bracket, UMBC would play Stony Brook. I think they cover.
Yep.
Vermont would end up drawing Hartford in mine. I think they cover with ease as well.
Same. I have UMBC over UMass Lowell. I tried to make the case, especially where I like them as a bit of a long shot for UMass Lowell. It's not happening. UMass Lowell turns over the ball a lot, and while UMBC's defense isn't known for forcing a lot of turnovers, they don't foul, and that's where UMass Lowell really thrives, is getting to that free throw stripe a lot. So they are shit out of luck there, and UMass Lowell fouls a ton. UMBC gets the line a lot. UMBC can actually hit free throws. They're hitting them over 70% clip. So yeah, I have UMBC advancing, and I have Vermont advancing over Albany. Vermont's the most talented team. I think that whoever pulls it out from Hartford or Albany, they're going to be dog time. Is this when they have the 8-day layoff between games?
No, they have the Final Four and the finals are back to back. They have the 8-day layoff after Saturday to the next round or whatever.
Yeah.
Or is it before they go to the Final Four? It's in between those two.
Yeah, I just think there's going to be some challenges for whoever's drawing Vermont and UMBC, and that's why we both have the number 1 and 2 teams advancing. If this conference was a little bit more balanced, we didn't have pods, we didn't have teams that were going to be playing 33% more games than whoever they're playing in the what would that be, the Final Four, their championship weekend. I saw that on the UMB on the American East website. I was like, championship weekend, you're kind of just letting 2 teams walk right in there. So I have a hard time I have a hard time dubbing this championship weekend, and that's why we both have those 2 teams advancing to the final.
Yeah, and this just isn't personal bias. If you load up team rankings, if you load up Bart Torvik, you do their simulators, their math is smart enough to incorporate what's going on here. Both of the teams have over a 75% chance to make the finals, solely because they have to win 1 game.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they both have them over 75% to make the finals. I mean, UNH is the only team other than those 2 that gets any bit of advantage, and it's arguably like the second or third worst team in the conference, just because their defense is on par with Binghamton, and that's how bottom it is. NJIT and UMass Lowell, they rank right in there with their. So that's just where, yes, even though how bad the offenses are, there's one of the bottom defenses in UNH. So literally, UMBC and Vermont get the biggest, like you said, edge whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
So in this final matchup between the Retrievers and the Catamounts here, Vermont's probably going to be a 5 to 6 point favorite.
Yeah.
Metrics, when you load it up, you factor in the home court for UMBC, you still get that. If you use the simulators, you remove every other team from it, you still get Vermont at like a 60 to 65% chance to pull this one out. So that's where, when you're looking at odds, when you're looking at anything, you just have to hope UMBC pulls out the last game of the season again. And for some reason, Vermont puts up 55 points, because this did occur there. They shot 4 from 22 from 3. That's the only thing from that matchup. I cannot say I watched that because UMBC's defense didn't do anything that outstanding. I mean, they limited them on the offensive boards, but that's nowhere where Vermont makes their money. Sure, they didn't have a very good efficient field goal percentage tonight, but that really doesn't matter either. They just had their 2 biggest games outside of the mean against UMBC, where they had one of their best offensive performances, and then they had by far the worst offensive performance. So that's where predicting this game, figuring out where it's going to come out, you would just have to say law of large numbers, which is 3 in this scenario, is going to come out to be a tie. They're going to split the trophy in half, just like the regular season title.
I was like, where is he going with this?
The perfect ending. They won by 9. They lost by 9 in the first one. They won by 10 in the next one. They're going to tie.
Oh, that was funny.
If this game goes to overtime, I am 100% clipping this and just retweeting it every day for a month, saying that they're going to tie.
Oh my god, that is too funny.
All right, so, do you actually have legitimate reasoning where you think this one's going to come out and not say it's going to end in a tie? Because that's not even betting available. Or I guess you could say, will this game go to overtime? But
honestly, I bet you could get someone to put up a 3-way line for you. For will this game go to overtime? You know, you get a 3-way market on college basketball in the American East Finals. We can't even get pre-tourney odds, but yeah, we're getting that.
Vermont UMBC, that'll actually take some decent coin on it.
It would,
so
yeah.
Probably would.
Yeah. Not really. I mean, Vermont, I don't know. I would not be surprised one way or the other. Like you said, the way they split the series this season, Vermont not playing any out-of-conference opponents makes it hard to really gauge what is Vermont capable of. It's truly it's a coin flip game. Regardless of what the spread is, take the dog. I think like that might be probably what I'm gonna do. Whether it's probably doing something similar to what I did with IPFW, and half on the spread, half on the money line of the dog, and hope for a close game. I mean, if it ends in a tie, I at least get my money back on that money line bet. So.
Yeah, that's where in this one, I honestly think I would go against it in a 5-point spread. I just think if Vermont's going to show it, sure, they might eke out a close game, but the fouling at the end, that might just draw a 5-point game over. I looked at every angle that UMBC can do it. They just are going to have to outsize them because Ryan Davis is the only player that they have on the inside. And UMBC, they have Bo Horvath.
He's not huge, is he?
No, he's 6'8". So that's where they have Aiken and Horvath, that if those two can just establish a 2-guy presence on each block, that's their best way to do it. But
yeah, I
just don't necessarily think that'll be the case because Horvath does like to get drawn outside of the arc a little bit more often and shoot 31%. So those two, they just have to stay in the lane. Don't leave the arc. That's your best chance of pulling it out and hit the boards. They don't hit the boards at a great rate. You have 2 of the biggest guys in the conference on the floor at the same time because the next biggest player Vermont rolls out is 6'6". So just hit the boards, grind out a dirty win at home. And honestly, I don't think it happens. Vermont will go dancing and hopefully get eliminated in the play-in 16 game.
Yeah, I can certainly see that happening. Let me see real quick if I can pull up. Where's T rank? He doesn't have the matchups yet. To see who they might actually play. But yeah, I'm sure they
the
are
play-in 16.
Yeah. Oh, Bryant. They could draw
Bryant,
Bryant.
Sienna, Prairie View, and
Prairie View.
Norfolk.
Prairie View's a wagon. I'm not gonna lie. They're. I looked today against. I mean, I say they're a wagon because they're fucking 33-point favorites over Mississippi Valley State. What is wrong with me?
Oh, actually, Haslametrics has the American East getting the one of the 2 16s, your safe games.
Yeah, that's what Bart does.
So I
as
guess
well.
because this is like the
Is them getting a
lowest
16
conference.
seed.
Yeah, since this is like the lowest conference I'm previewing, it's just like automatically thinking they're playing 16 game because even when I'm looking at the Big South tomorrow, I think any team in the top 4 in the Big South could give Vermont and UMBC a run for their money.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Winthrop would.
Well, I wasn't considering Winthrop because that would just that's an easy win there. So I guess I should have clarified more.
Yeah.
But sorry for slandering the Big South there. All right, so we're both going chalk, or are you gonna say your Retrievers pull it out?
I'll take the Retrievers.
All right, so
I am
maybe
a dog guy. I mean, why not?
very true. So on Saturday morning, we will have a pick and troll episode. So since the St. Joe's UMass game never happened this season, maybe it'll happen. I think the UMass Lowell Stony Brook because you're close enough.
I am.
I'm close enough to Stony Brook.
My dad is from Lowell, so
they're in New York. I'm in North Jersey. I think that's the most appropriate sandwich / hoagie / bet that we can do to make up for it because I'll back my Seawolves. You can back your Riverhawks. So make sure you tune in to us on Saturday for Pick and Troll. That'll be the next time we're back together. Before then, check out thebreakdownsports.com. Follow us on Twitter at BRKDWN_sports. You can follow us on Twitter under our heads because I hate spelling out my Twitter. I've done it too many times recently. Jordan, if you have any last words, anything you want to promo from the breakdown before we sign off?
Yeah, we've got some exciting new content up on Breakdown Sports. We do have a UFC fight card up on there, so that's exciting to see. Going to start seeing a lot more combat sports from us, primarily UFC with the addition of Cody, who's going to be doing some DFS and betting stuff for UFC. We also have a ponies article up, 2, or soon to be 2. We will have one for a race coming up this weekend, and we have a early preview to the Derby. Real early preview of the Derby. So we got a lot of new content up there. New episode of the Break Room is up. If you want one of the better Troll Toll discussions, I highly recommend listening to the last 10 to 15 minutes of that episode because being involved in what caused that Troll Toll, playing just a small piece of it with one Emmy Award-winning reporter, is certainly was exciting. So good content.
I think he paid a lot for that Emmy.
Probably.
Yes, sir. But until then, like Jordan said, we got a lot of stuff cooking. Next week. Always be checking us out. Refresh that website. Pound that Twitter because we got live streams coming out almost every day for the next 2 weeks.
Yep.
Until
NFL
then,
free agency articles too. Let's not forget those this weekend. Some
sir.
Early look at fantasy. So,
but since this is American East, half of these teams, I don't even know if any of them have a Division I football team or 1A or whatever it's called. So we'll see you guys later. I don't want to talk American East football.